working with the local church to take the hope of Christ to every student in the United States. This is First Priority. Now here are your hosts, Steve Chirico and Brad Schelling.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the First Priority Podcast. I am glad you're here, and I'm really glad because Ryan McMichael is here today, not Steve Chirico. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Good to have you. We are continuing our series talking this month about church partnerships, and we brought Ryan in today, we being me, because Steve has bailed on me again for the first time. I don't know. I don't feel like I should really throw him on under the bus too much.
Again for the first time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like
that's
you should
good
get
enough.
one pass. Yeah.
One pass?
One mulligan. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. I'll leave him alone then after this.
There you go.
But yeah, Ryan, welcome to the show. We'll jump in. Tell us who you are, where you are, and what you're doing with First Priority.
Yeah. So I am area director with First Priority Greater Nashville. So I am over all of Maury County and then South Williamson counties.
Okay.
We've been here locally there in the Maury County area in Columbia a little less than 5 years. Prior to coming on staff with FP in September, I was the student pastor at First Baptist Columbia. And so again, transitioned with FP in the fall, still love student ministry. Love seeing students and leaders equipped for the work of the ministry, and felt God calling us into this season.
Nice.
For that reason.
Family?
My wife, Jessica, I need to mention her first because I always go straight to my kids. And I have to add her at the end, and she's going to be able to watch this. So my wife, Jessica, and I have been married for 12 years coming up in April. We have 3 amazing kids. All of them are adopted. Adoption's a big thing in our family. I'm adopted as well. And so have 2 younger siblings that are adopted internationally. And so our kids are 7. And then that's Charlotte. She's a first grader. And then we have our 2 twins, Knox and Nash, and they are 3. They've just turned 3, and they are all
3-year-olds.
Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
A lot of fun, not a lot of rest.
I was going to say, you have a busy moment in life.
Not a lot of sitting down. Yeah. But it's a lot of fun.
That's right. Well, you mentioned you worked with the church. How long were you at First Family in the student ministry, right?
So I came on staff with First Family March of 2019. And so right at 4.5 years, I was the student pastor my entire time there. And so over grades 7 through 12.
Okay. And why First Priority? Why did you, what was the tug at your heart for coming over to First Priority?
I think I alluded to it a little bit, but I feel like I was made to equip students and leaders, and really equip people to be at their best and equip them for the work of the ministry, and then to share the gospel. And so First Priority allows us to do both of those things.
It's what we do, right?
It's what we do. It's who we are. We're not trying to be all things to all people.
Yep.
And so it was such a perfect fit. It has been a perfect fit for some time. But then increasingly, I think the other thing was I understood as a student pastor what a valuable, important role that was, but also understood having a heart for evangelism, that there was a whole segment of kids as a student pastor that I wasn't necessarily getting to reach or interact with as much as I tried to maintain and have an active campus ministry, because they weren't coming to church, right? Their parents aren't coming, and so if they don't have a way to get there on their own, they're not going to darken the door of the church. But I'm not trying to replace or supplant the church with First Priority. I believe that we can be a valuable outreach and an extension of the church to connect them back with the local church. And so we're not the only ones who do what we do, but I believe in the FP model. Not because it's got the FP logo on it, but because I believe it's the biblical model. Disciples making disciples. So
and Steve Chirico's your boss. So then, that's the other. I mean, it's the biblical and Steve, right?
Right below the biblical motivation 1 and 2. Yeah, Steve. Yeah, we might need to cut that from the podcast. Might be borderline.
So I said I wasn't going to pick them anymore, so I'm putting them up there instead of
I know that's very
down.
good. Yeah. You can have one compliment for every tear down.
One compliment for every tear. Is that the rule for today?
I think so. Not for me, just for Steve.
I know where we're going. I've got to think about this now. It's pick on Steve's turn.
I'm sorry, Steve. Yeah.
So there was history there. Your friend and mine, Kevin Whitmire, was around doing some First Priority for a while and served First Family and you through that relationship. Talk about that as a student pastor. How did First Priority serve you in your student ministry while you were student pastor? I didn't set you up for this question, so hopefully I'm throwing you a softball.
No, it's great. And again, so many of these answers kind of overlap a little bit, but like I talked about, one of the reasons that I think coming on staff with First Priority, why it was so clear that it was God's call at this time, but why it was right is because I understood, as someone who had a heart for the local church reaching the local school campus, that with the presence of First Priority in our area, that we didn't have to reinvent the wheel and try to do our own thing. That exactly what I just said, what every student pastors, I think, hopefully dream and prayer is that students would step up as leaders, that they would be trained to share the gospel, and that they would take an active role in reaching their campus, right? Yeah. As the best equipped and primary missionaries for their campuses. First Priority was already doing that. And so it became increasingly clear to me, just through some help with campus coaching and volunteering, that probably the best available stewardship of my time as a student pastor who wanted to reach the local schools was not to try to start or do our own thing or another thing, but to plug in with the ministry that First Priority was already doing. And so there's something just really freeing, and I think I'm just able to be very honest with other student pastors, having had that experience to share with them. Yep. Hey, I'm inviting you to do this, not because I'm employed by First Priority, though I am, but I'm inviting you to do this because you want to be a good steward of your time. If you were in a situation, anything remotely like mine, we were a mid to large size church that is right in the middle of a county. And so we had 15 different schools represented in our student ministry. And so if I am trying to week in and week out be on every single one of those school campuses, it's not sustainable, right? Yep. But I was absolutely able to have a direct impact and influence through First Priority by having relationships with the FP clubs that were on those campuses already.
Yep. So. That's my story right there as well. My first student pastor job was Oak Harbor, Washington. 1 high school, 2 middle schools. I could go buy 29-cent bean burritos at Taco Bell on Tuesdays and just be the hero for 30 or 50 kids because it was so cheap to be able to do. But when I moved to Sioux Falls, then there were 16 middle and high schools represented in the ministry, and it's like, how in the world do we do this? Until Mark sat down and said, well, you want to be part of the network? You don't have to be at all of them. You could be at this one. Absolutely. Sweet. Yeah. I'll go to that one.
Absolutely.
Yep. And I obviously went where we needed, right? Washington High School or Patrick Henry Middle School or all the different things. Yeah. Sioux Falls was the Mount Rushmore schools. Right. Washington High School, all that kind of stuff. All the whole historian. So, yeah. It's good. You're new staffer to First Priority. We were talking about it a little bit. What's one thing you've learned already? Maybe one thing that surprised you coming on, right? And I'm going to quote you. I'm going to throw you under the bus a little bit. I thought I knew a lot, and now I'm learning what I didn't know, right? Right?
I thought that was off the record.
Was that a private conversation? Yeah. Sorry about that.
Well, it was until this moment.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. I have learned a lot, and I think one of the things that I've learned, and this is not the company line at all, but I think this is a real positive and just something that's been encouraging, something that's been affirming for me in this season of ministry, is that very few, if any, churches that I have reached out to, very few, if any, relationships that I built and established that are new, even if they're not able to financially support or give of their time right away to what we're doing, even if they've never heard of First Priority before, very few, if any of them, are not excited about what we are doing, about our mission, are not excited about us reaching the local school campus with the gospel. And very few, if any of them, don't recognize and understand the need for that. And so they are cheering us on, they're championing us, and they're committing and devoting real resources. And so again, I think every church that I have asked to partner prayerfully, asked to partner in Maury County has said yes to partnership
Awesome.
in some way. Now, not all of that, right? It doesn't look the same for every church. That doesn't mean all of that is financial partnership, but some of those churches are praying, and I know they're genuinely praying for us because they're texting and they're following up.
That's
and they're
awesome.
saying, hey, what can we do? You know, and then I think the other thing that I've seen that I knew kind of in theory, but that I'm just seeing fleshed out on the school campuses is that, you know, our strongest FP clubs that I'm connected to or, you know, that I know of have really strong, engaged student leaders. And again, that's kind of a duh statement, right? Because that's what we do. That's why we believe in what we do. But when you give students ownership, 99.999% of the time, they will exceed your expectations if you'll just cast the biblical vision for them of who God says they are and who God says they can be. And if you'll put those tools in their hand, in so many ways, they're not old enough to be jaded like we are, right? And so if you get, I mean, truly, if you share with them the Lord's mission, right? And they catch a vision for it and they're on fire, man, they will run through a brick wall for it. And so, you know, that's something that, you know, hopefully, in at least in concept or in theory as a student pastor, and I was always as a student pastor praying for as many opportunities to involve students in leadership and give them ownership of the ministry. But we get to see that like in action and play out every week through FP. And so that's just very gratifying. That's just a blessing. And, you know, I don't think we need to overcomplicate it or overanalyze it or over spiritualize it. Just say, Lord, thank you for that. Thank you for this grace of students stepping up and owning it. And let's give them as much as we can so they can keep doing it.
Well, Larry Franks talks about in training, I don't think you've been to kind of new staff training yet, but he talks about people give to a cause and people give to a person. And the cause is obviously very easy to get behind. And I think you as a person is very easy to get behind. So it doesn't surprise me that you say that about the churches and the students and everybody getting involved down in Maury County, that, you know, you're seeing some success there. So
you just gave me a compliment. So should I be prepared? Should I be ready?
No, that only applies to Steve. It's only for Steve. Yes. I think I owe him a dig right now. So I'm trying to come up with something.
I have been, as I'm raising support, which is part of my role, as I'm casting the vision for what we think God wants to do in Maury County, it has been really easy for me. Don't want to minimize the challenges of fundraising for anybody who's going through that, right? Like it's the struggles. You
still got to make the phone call.
Absolutely. But still got to follow up, still got to be faithful, still got to put the work in. But it is easy to tell the story of what God is doing through FP because, like I just said, we see it all the time. It's real, and I believe in it. And so from that standpoint, man, when I'm fundraising, when I'm developing partners in any way, shape, or form, I'm really telling the story of how I've seen God work through First Priority and have the benefit of doing that as someone who has some personal experience and has seen God use it not only in my ministry as a student pastor, but used it in my life to encourage me even before coming on as a staffer. So it's easy to get excited about that. It's easy to cast vision for that.
Well, when you see it in the students' eyes, I don't know how many of these people you bring to a club, but that reminded me, when you show up at a club and you see these kids and you see them either have confidence or shake out of their skin, right? Because you have everything in between, right? Because some of these kids are like, I've never done this before. What am I doing? And the confident ones that are just, hey, let's go. But when you see it in action, it reminds me of a story. Indianapolis, Indiana, we were out fundraising, raising some funds, and starting a club in a school where a businessman had graduated 20, 30 years earlier and walk out of the building again, and he just stops and said, I just need to pray because I crossed this flagpole for 4 years and never dreamt that I'd be back here sowing seeds of the gospel back into the place that wasn't a place where seeds of the gospel were sown for me. And it was a truly humbling moment for him. It was a inspiring, amazing moment for us who got to watch him have that moment. And it's just crazy.
it's cool too, because you have, being someone who, live in the community. Like I said, I live in Maury County in Columbia, specifically in the area that I'm directing and ministering in. And so there are certain assumptions, certain reputations, raps that every school and the school boards and school systems get right within the community. And so to see the change happen from conversations around a certain school, or the reputation of a certain school change from being something that is negative, and instead to talk and conversation about excitement and positivity and real awe, if that's the word for it, of what God is doing on a local school campus.
Yep.
I'll use Withorn Middle School as an example. That is one that we relaunched at in the fall, and we have had 20 to 30 consistently, if not more. Some invite weeks, 35, 40 there. And the last time that club met in 2022, there were 3 to 4 consistent students meeting. And so I attribute some of the difference there to, one, those core students that were there in 2022, they've been the ones that have invited the vast majority of those that are coming now. But two, that school has been so hungry, I think, for the gospel. It's the only gospel presence on campus right now currently that we know of. And so teachers, students, parents, to have the hope and the positivity and the life and the heart change that we're seeing through the gospel. It's not enough to have positivity or kind of warm, fuzzy feelings, right? But to see that there's actual life change that has had. There are kids that are coming to Christ regularly. There are kids that are taking a deeper step into their faith and wanting to get baptized regularly. People there are excited. And I think some of the school community parents and teachers that may or may not believe, or may not be believers, are just excited that someone believes in and is for the school, right? And so listen, schools face a lot, and increasingly more every year. And so teachers get discouraged. We forget that, I think, sometimes, because they're the ones that are often solving a lot of the problems. But teachers, administration, man, they need us to come alongside and to speak a word of hope and encouragement. And that's one of the things we get to do. So
I love it.
It's not, I don't know that there's a theological concept or term for it, but what you're describing, the moment that a student gets it, right? I think any of us who have been in student ministry, we could describe that for you, even if there's not necessarily a paradigm for it, but you know it when you see it. But it's especially cool and gratifying. There's nothing like a student getting it, but then you see, and we forget that, hey, faculty members can get it too, and can get it, right? Like, we can encourage adults through this as well.
And we do.
That's pretty neat. We do all the time.
That's right. It's awesome.
Pretty cool.
It's very cool. It's very cool. Any parting words of wisdom? Somebody thinking about listening into this, thinking, man, do I make the jump? Whether it be jump into volunteering at a club or coming on staff or whatever the case might be.
No pressure. So we're going to know if people come on staff with First Priority in a few months that it was because of my encouraging word. And if they don't,
right here, this moment, no pressure.
No, I didn't do a very good job of being inspired. I think if God is calling you to it, and that, again, this sounds so churchy and cliche, but I think the reason it sounds cliche is because we don't believe it in our heart and at our core enough sometimes. But if God is calling you somewhere into something, even if it doesn't fully make sense to you, even if it doesn't fully make sense to everyone around you, it is always the right decision to say yes. It is, being in the Lord's will is always the right place for you to be. And so if you sense, and if you're on a journey of even considering serving with First Priority in some way, or serving on staff especially, right, if you're open to that conversation, you've already probably seen some things that have you wondering if God is, some signs that may or may not be pointing you this way. I would just say, man, if God is calling you to it, it will always be the right step. It will always be the right decision. And I think, kind of related to that, we never know the impact that we can make.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the short term, we certainly aren't going to know the impact we've made on some things until the other side of heaven, truly. And so if you're in a youth group and you're faithfully shepherding or pastoring 3 to 5 kids, or you're at a First Priority club and you're leading, and that club is you've got 3, 4, 5, 6 kids at it, whatever it is, you are faithfully discipling one individual. Who is to say that the Lord is not in that and does not have you there for a reason and a purpose? And also, who's to say that those aren't going to be the very seeds that he uses to then reap a great harvest later on? May not be this year, may not be our lifetime, who knows? But that story at Whitthorne of not so long ago, right? 2022, and the difference between 3 to 4 versus what we're seeing now. Again, it's just kids being faithful, continuing to show up, continuing to tell the story, and God blessing it. And using it.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know, right? What our expectation isn't always what the God-sized outcome is on that, right?
Yeah.
So
God's not limited, and we tend to put our own kind of limitations on him all the time. We tend to project those on him, right?
Be faithful to what he's called you to today, where you started with that, and who knows where it goes.
That's it.
Yep. Cool. Well, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for carrying the burden of working with Steve, working for Steve. Somebody's got to support the man.
I'm a little disappointed we didn't get more digs in today. I'm actually a little bit disappointed in you, so I got to be honest.
I'm not going to see him this week. I'm not saying that it's a good week, but it's a good week. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
I'm praying for you both. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, everybody. Ryan. Yeah. Thanks for being on. Thanks for entertaining the audience and being a part of it. Thanks everybody for listening and for being part of the First Priority movement. We are thankful for each one of you. I know I don't know everybody who listens, but yeah, that's where, like you said, you don't know the influence you're having. So thank you for listening in, being a part of the First Priority movement, taking the hope of Christ to every student. We love you. We appreciate you. And we'll see you again next week.